Mrs. Gonzalez Prescott, and Mrs. Safiri. Thank you for last year when you voted to extend my contract until September of 2023, as well as the vote of confidence that I can do this work and do this well for the district. To Superintendent Richard Lochner, Elementary Superintendent Mrs. Ann Palmer, Secondary Superintendent Mrs. Wanda Ortiz Rivera, and Special Ed Services Ms. Rhonda Young, I'd like to thank them for working with me because remember, we are on new ground, new territory. This has never been done in this district before, and it has basically been a smooth ride. It could have been a whole lot of nonsense, but it hasn't. To every principal, department head, Mr. Kevin Coyne, community advocates, thank you for understanding the importance of this work for our children as they graduate from Brentwood High School. And finally, I would like to thank God. I was born in 1950. I'm a child of the Civil Rights era, okay? And I've been through. I've seen this before, and I do hope that this time that there will be changes in this society. And to Stacey O'Connor, thank you. A few minutes ago, she said, don't worry about it. I got you. Thank you for having me. I'm going to pull, oh, okay. Can you bring it over just a little bit? Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion, DEI update, Brentwood Union Free School District. Presented by Ms. Betty F. Brown Green, CEO, McNair Belgrave, LLC, UFSD Board of Education meeting. This, I thought it was going to be in May, but this is June 2nd, 2022. Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion update, today's presentation. To discuss the role as a DEI consultant, define diversity, equity, inclusion in other terms, provide historical context of diversity within school districts throughout Long Island, and specifically the Brentwood Union Free School District, outline the work that has been conducted during the 2021 and 2022 academic years, and submit recommendations for moving forward with this work at the Brentwood Union Free School District. A little bit about me. 36-year career in education, 25 years in the classroom at West, East, and South Middle Schools. I started as a dean at the high school and ended up as the evening high school at Brentwood the evening assistant principal at Brentwood High School. I substituted 1 year in Bellport and Bayshore School Districts. Certified in Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion from E. Cornell University. BS degree in Home Economics Education, MS degree in General Studies, certified in School Building Administration. Next. Over 350 additional hours in continuing education and life fulfillment courses. 60-year Brentwood resident and graduate of Brentwood High School, 1969. Mother of 4 Brentwood graduates, 1991, 93, 98, and 2004. Grandmother of 8 and great-grandmother of 1. Along with partners in education, coordinated annual educational empowerment sessions for First Baptist Church of Bayshore. And what that was is that what we did as a church family right before school started, we would give supplies away, and I have to commend Mr. Moss, because he just took it over, and now it's a big, really big thing. But we would invite the 5 districts that Brentwood was a part of: Brentwood, Bayshore, Central Islip, Deer Park, and East Islip or West Islip. And we would invite them, and we would talk to the children. We would have workshops for them, so when they went back to school, they would know what would be expected. We would also talk with the parents, so they understood what they were entitled to as parents, and why it was important for them to participate in their children's education. Currently, I'm the president of the Mid-Island Club of the National Association, Negro Business and Professional Women's Clubs Incorporated, and I've been honored by several organizations and elected officials for community and educational advocacy. Next. Purpose of DEI work. I began working with Brentwood, it should have said February, that's when my contract was, and because of COVID, everything was halted, and then we started again in February 2021. Hired as a DE consultant to help bring district in alignment and and understand this is a national work. This is not just a local work. Throughout the United States of America, every state is looking for qualified people of color to teach their children. So it's not just Brentwood, it's the whole the whole United States. A growing body of research finds that all students benefit when their schools, can you bring it over just a little bit, please? When their schools implement strong diversity, equity, and inclusion policies and practices. The benefits can lead to improved student achievement, which in turn can lead to outcomes in other areas of their lives. My research, New York State Department of Education, Newsday, Connecticut Department of Education, and I went to Connecticut because they have schools like Brentwood, and my concern is what can we use from other districts that might work for us, because we are an individual. Okay, Brentwood has its own unique characteristics, but what I want to see is what are other school districts doing, and how can we make that work for us? Okay, thank you. Next. Assess the hiring practice of teachers and administrators in Brentwood School District. Work in conjunction with current BUFSD leadership, including Board of Ed Superintendent and Union President, and assess the process. All right? I believe that we can all work together to get what we need for our children, because the most important commodity that we have in this district is making sure that our children are educated and they understand the importance of who they are. And we want our children to see, this is my goal as your diversity, equity, inclusion consultant. Every child in the Brentwood School District should be able to walk into every school and see a reflection of themselves, because representation matters. Representation matters, and all children need to see themselves, because if I see me and I can see that person in a higher position, then that can make me strive to do better, especially if you come from families who have never seen anybody do any better. The Brentwood School District's mission statement, understand how OLAS can be used to expand the pool and pipeline of qualified candidates. I went on OLAS, I called OLAS, I went on their website. And what I have concluded is that if we change the algorithm, because in OLAS it says that they can find you any hard candidates, okay? Then if OLAS, and that is the system that we use, because it's part of BOCES, if OLAS can find us hard candidates, then if we change the algorithm of what we're looking for, then we should be able to find more diverse candidates. The Brentwood School District mission statements, the Brentwood School District in partnership, could you move that over just a little bit, please, or move the people out the way?
It's the Zoom. You have a little tab up there, yeah.
I'm not touching anything. Thank you. The Brentwood School District mission statement. The Brentwood School District, in partnership with our community, will provide an exceptional education, build character, and empower all students to reach their full potential as life learners in a diverse global society. It has been a proven fact that when children have diverse teachers, they get to see a bigger portion of the world. And that is our goal, to make sure that all of our children see a representation of themselves. Next. Diversity is the presence of difference that may include race, gender, religion, sexual orientation, ethnicity, nationality, socioeconomic status, language, disability, age, religious commitment, or political perspective. Populations that have been and remained underrepresented among practitioners in the field and marginalized in the broader society. Equity is promoting justice, impartiality, and fairness within the procedures, processes, and distribution of resources by institutions or systems. Tackling equity issues requires an understanding of the root causes of outcomes of disparities within our society. It is what it is. And the best thing, I always told my children to tell the truth. If you tell the truth, I can help you. But if you tell a lie, I can't help you. We must look at our systems and see where they have been unfair, not equitable. And then we must bring all of our resources together and say, okay, we're going to do A, B, C, and D. You cannot do it all in 1 year, 2 years, or 3 years. But if each year we can make progress, that means we're moving forward. Inclusion is an outcome to ensure those that are diverse actually feel and are welcomed. Inclusion outcomes are met when you, your institution, and your program are truly inviting to all. To the degree to which diverse individuals are able to participate fully in the decision-making processes and develop opportunities within an organization or group. Diversity is a fact, equity is a choice, inclusion is an action, belonging is an outcome. And we want every child and every staff member to feel welcomed. This is the largest suburban district on Long Island, probably 4th in the state of New York. Wouldn't it be wonderful that you could come to the Brentwood School District and, like I said before, every child sees a representation of themselves? Implicit bias, also known as unconscious or hidden bias. Implicit biases are negative associations that people unknowingly hold. They are expressed automatically without conscious awareness. Everyone holds unconscious beliefs about various social and identity groups, and these biases stem from one tendency to organize social worlds by categorizing. In-group bias, favoritism, is a tendency for groups to favor themselves by rewarding group members economically, socially, psychologically, and emotionally in order to uplift one group over the other. Number of communities, diversity, equity, and inclusion update context. Number of communities across Long Island, 291. Number of public schools across Long Island, 126. Percentages of educators of color across Long Island, 9.5. Nationwide, there is a 0.2% of African American males as educators. Brentwood was established in 1857, originally called Modern Times. Brentwood's first graduating class was in 1957. These are March figures. They might have changed. Number of students in the Brentwood Union Free School District, 18,320. Like I said, it might have changed. Number of Brentwood educators, 1,174. I got this information from Newsday. UFSD educators by race or ethnicity. Caucasian, 888. Black or African American, 30. Hispanic, 247. Asian, 9. Native American or Indigenous, 0. I could not find any information concerning Middle Eastern educators in Brentwood. Okay, student by race or ethnicity. This data is from the National Center for Education Statistics, where all schools as well as colleges have to give their data. Caucasian, 3,297. Black and African American, 2,198. Hispanic or Latinx, 12,092. Asian, 366. Some other, 183. Two or more races, 183. The probability of a student in the Brentwood School District having the same educator from the same or similar backgrounds are as follows. Caucasian, 75.3. African American, 1.6. Hispanic, 1.5. Asian, 0. Middle Eastern, 0. And I forgot to add the indigenous, which will probably be 0. Many children can complete an entire K through 12 education in Brentwood and never have a person who shares the same ethnicity or culture that they are part of. Participated, this is what I've done so far. I participated in over 50 interviews starting last year. I worked from February until December with different, for administrative and teaching positions throughout the district. I sat with department chairpersons or heads of the hiring committee to review resumes. Attended interviews for some candidates, took notes, and when requested, provided feedback. Reviewed the process to determine what is working well in areas of improvement. Collaborated, okay, these are my recommendations. Again, if we change the algorithm on OLAS, we should be able to get more diverse candidates. I'll end it with that. Create a more clear and documented search process. Back in the day, it was rumored that Mr. Sonderling, Edward Sonderling, who the high school is named after, went to local colleges in the South to get African American teachers. We have a network with Cortland and St. Joe's. What I'd like to see us do is to develop a network with Old Westbury, Stony Brook, Malloy, and some of the other colleges so that we can get a more diverse group. And I'd like to do an implicit bias training internally and to your external stakeholders. And there was something, are there any questions? I think that's it. Last one. Okay, are there any questions?
I do have some questions.
Huh?
I do have some questions.
Go ahead.
But thank you. That was an excellent presentation.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
Thank you. Am I on? Thank you. That was an excellent presentation.
Thank you.
I have questions that were not covered. You just touched on them. So I just want to know about some of the outcomes of your interventions, like in interviews and so.
Thank you. From what I understand, what I did not do is because I wasn't sure if I could do it, and I didn't necessarily want to step on anyone's toes, okay? I did not call the Human Resources Department to find out. I know we did hire last year. We have an African American assistant principal over at one of the elementary schools. I know that our math and science coordinator is African American. I know that we hired a young lady. She was out of Queens. I'm not sure if she's Hispanic or Greek. So what we have been doing is looking for qualified. Because you are a certain color does not mean you're qualified. I live here. We want qualified. We don't want to look overqualified. And qualified should be included. There should be no such thing. If you're qualified, give the person an interview. But the first thing we want is qualified. If they meet the qualifications, then let's take it to the next level. What I can do, if you'd like, if I have permission, I can call Human Resources. We can get you the exact number.
Well, I don't really want exact numbers. I mean, at some point we might want that. Mm-hmm. What I was wondering was, as part of the process, let's say you're in an interview and they do ask, you said at times they ask for your feedback. If there's a difference between what you think should happen in that interview and what actually happens, is there a process in place to kind of like work that through?
Okay, I sit in on the first. In fact, I was in special services all day. I got there at 8 o'clock this morning. I reviewed some resumes for our chair, and then I went for interviews for the psychologist. I'm grateful that I'm respected, and if I say that I disagree with something, they don't necessarily, they will hear me. Okay, I don't sit in on the second part of the interviews. So if we send someone if they make it through the first, that's Mr. Lotion's department, and I'm not privy to that. Okay, and I trust and believe that he's done this, and his I apologize. His staff has done this well enough that they can look at people and choose. If I don't agree with something, I'll say it. Now, whether they change it or whether, I'm not sure, but I certainly, if I don't think the person is qualified, for a position at Brentwood, I will most certainly voice my opinion. Because remember, this is my home too. I'm an educator, and I'm still concerned, even though I don't have any children in school, I'm still concerned about the quality of education and the quality of educators that come to the Brentwood School District and teach our children. They're just not commodities. They're bright, they're intelligent, and they deserve the best. Did I answer your question?
Yes, you answered some of my question.
Okay.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I think Ms. Burgos. Julie, you still
Yeah,
have
so I just wanted to know, like, I'm still not very clear as to what exactly happens, in the interview.
Okay. Let me start.
Can you be a little bit more specific?
Yes, I
Because
can.
I am trying to follow what you're.
Yeah.
Right.
Can you be more specific in terms of what you're looking
Yes,
for?
and I think you did answer part of it. So, I was wondering specifically about, when there is, let's say when there is a candidate that's a person of color, and the qualifications are maybe on par or maybe not, what happens? Like,
I'm an educator.
I don't know if I'm asking
No.
correctly.
Before I'm the DEI consultant, I am an educator.
And can I
And-
preface also, I've heard good things, so this is
Okay.
not at all like,
What happens if a person of color isn't qualified? That person of color is not qualified. Okay? If a Caucasian is not qualified, that Caucasian is not qualified. Again, the goal is to get the best qualified educators for the Brentwood School District because they're going to be here for 20 to 25 years. So they're going to make an impact, and we want the most bang for our buck.
You know
do you
what?
feel-
If I can. So, I heard an
had a
answer that
follow-up.
was. I heard an answer that was basically, when you asked it a little earlier in terms of she'll provide the input,
Right.
but then ultimately it is the group that makes the decision
Right.
on that. So,
I do get that.
okay.
No, I do understand that. So do you feel like you have been able to have an impact in our hiring in terms of getting more teachers and staff of color to come into the district?
Well, let me bring this out. I wasn't going to use it, but hold on just a moment, please.
So some of those measurable standards, Ms. Burgos and Ms. Green, I think is we should have a base that we are working from. And I don't know if that was something that you looked at, but if I was trying to answer that question, I would be looking for a number of candidates who happen to be of color that are applying for the position. I would want to know of those candidates that are there for all of the responses that we've gotten, how many of those have actually gotten through the vetting system and how many of those have been interviewed? So
my question
those are measurable standards.
The way I have it written is like that, but I know Ms. Green stated from the beginning she doesn't have those numbers. so I
Okay,
just make it more general.
I don't know, what I can do is I will call tomorrow if I have permission, because what I did not want to do is come in here like gangbusters. No, and I wanted to respect the process. So, if I have permission to call Human Resources
Why not?
to get that information, then yes. But let me give you some information. This was a Newsday, March 8th. Okay, you have 17 schools. You have 30 African American, 247. There are at least 12 of your 17 schools have no Asian representation. 5 elementary schools have no African American educators or Asians. 15 of your schools have maybe no multiracial educators. But I am looking, along with the committee, as an to see if that person is qualified to be a part of the Brentwood School District. I'm looking at the skills that they bring, but I'm also looking at other things, okay? Like I said, now that I have permission, I can get the exact numbers of who was hired last year. I must give the committee credit. Ms. Palmer and myself, we went through probably over 160 resumes, not last Friday, a couple Fridays ago, all right, trying to get diverse candidates. Brentwood has to also understand that this is a big trend. So Brentwood is not the only school district that is looking for diverse candidates. All of the other school districts on Long Island, even in Florida, I was on my Facebook page, Broward County, Florida, they were offering first-year teachers more than they were offering regular, seasoned teachers to come down.
Right.
So
I just want, I think the interview part of the process is just one part of, possibly this effort to bring more diversity into our district. You also mentioned reaching out to colleges, and I think that's a very viable avenue to pursue. I did go to school in Brentwood myself, and I had quite a few, this was a long time ago, but I had educators of color. When I graduated high school, the assistant principal was a black man. My guidance counselor was a black woman. My science teacher was a black woman. I was exposed to that diversity, and I think that might have been the outcome of what you mentioned earlier, that there was an effort to go out to the colleges to recruit teachers of color to come in. So can we do more of that? I know that, as part of my work with the Long Island Latino Teachers Association, this is where we're trying to concentrate our efforts as well, to build up, the education part and actually recruit from the universities and create those pipelines that you also mentioned.
that is something that we can do. All right, I can make contact with the local colleges to find out if it's a teacher college. Yes, I can do that. Okay.
I would like to see, I don't know, that's me. I don't know if anybody else feels the same way.
Absolutely. I think that we've talked about this before, but I mean, to the point that you were making before, Julie, was that I think that, that interviews are just a part of the process, but we also want, we want the measurable standards in place so that we can see some kind of trend towards that success, that we're defining as success. So
yeah, and there shouldn't be a problem. I mean, we're not asking for names. We're just looking at numbers.
Numbers,
right? So that we can kind of see where, if we're going down the right track, or is there something we need to change? Or...
All right. Let me reiterate. Okay. I can call the Human Resources Department tomorrow to find out the number of, the total number of people who were hired, and then I can get the figures, and then...
What we're looking is total number of applicants, total number that were vetted, applications that were, I think that's just something that's not everything. I understand that's not everything that you're doing, but I just want to see what the total number of applications are, what the total number of interviews, of those interviews, how many happen to be, minority candidates, and how many of those move forward. So those are just
There's one other piece that I think is important for candidates of color that don't make it. I would want to know why, because I think that this can be a very good source of training for us, right? If we find that candidates of color consistency fall short in one particular area, then that's something that we can look to kind of strengthen, or that we can maybe change the way we look at things, or just, I think that's important to know.
Absolutely, and that is, and that's even after, because we've had a couple of cases where we've had, candidates who have been hired, not necessarily succeed. And that is, an area that I think that could be improved on.
I just think it's worth taking a look at. I also would like to request, Ms. Green, that we have more frequent conversations with you. I would like to request that we have more frequent conversations with you, so that we can kind of update as we go and not have to wait. I know COVID came and we had a lot of changes, but...
Eddie, can you use the microphone or put it towards...
Understand
that.
Not a problem. We can...
So moving forward, we'll make...
Right, moving forward, and then you can, not a problem at all.
Thank you.
I'm not hard of hearing, but I want to make sure that tomorrow morning I can call the Human Resources to get the information. Yes or no?
Absolutely.
We're also agreeing that I can reach out to colleges, okay, to find out beside Cortland and St. Joe's. There is a pipeline between Cortland and St. Joe's. I'd like to reach out to some of the other colleges on Long Island, and I will keep you updated, the board updated on everything that I do. Again, I would like to say thank you to Mr. Feliciano, and thank you to my BNP sister, Ms. Paula Moore. Are there any other
Wait,
questions?
Ms. Green,
Yep.
before you go,
Yep.
if I could, can I just, because I think maybe there are some questions that haven't been asked in terms of the process. If you don't mind, Betty, can I take it from the beginning to the end? Is everything all right?
No, I was going to say, could IT put the microphone back on her stand, please?
Yeah, because
Okay.
So,
for one position, there could be 1,000 resumes.
Yes.
How do you get that? to-
right, exactly. Let me just, tell you, what Betty has done for us, in the district. I think you should know this. Betty works very closely with the assistant superintendents, Ms. Ortiz, Ms. Palmer, Ms. Young, okay? But what I wish they were here because they could actually speak about their relationship with Betty that is, you don't mind if I call you Miss Green? I've worked with Betty for so many years. So, they have worked out a process to go through resumes. It actually starts before on OLAS, okay? Obviously now everybody has to apply on OLAS, okay? You can't drop your resume off. That's the one thing that I should be clear about. We advertise for jobs. You can't come in and drop a resume off at this desk, at that desk, and somebody walks it down, gives it to HR, and now they're in the pipeline. That's not the way it works. You have to apply on OLAS. Then on OLAS, what happens is the HR department, they go through, and let's say they are going for an elementary position, okay, a second grade position. What OLAS does is they go through and they make sure that the resume, the applicant rather, is certified in that particular area. I mean, obviously, if it's science, it's a little easier, biology, math, etc. But they're looking for certification. And believe it or not, there's a lot of people who apply for a job and they don't have the proper certifications. Once they, again, that number then is whittled down to a smaller number. And then what they do is they send the resumes up to the different departments. And this is where Betty has come in the last few years. And it really is wonderful. Okay, it was a little rough in the beginning because we had to coordinate with Miss Green. Call Miss Green. Can you make it on a Thursday? Can you make it on Friday? Whatever the case may be. And what happens is then they would go through the resumes. And I'll use Miss Palmer again. So Miss Green and Miss Palmer would go through the resumes. And what Miss Green and Miss Palmer have done, for example, is they now have created a rubric. And they go through the rubric and they assign points, okay? And there's a column, it's a rubric, and it's almost like a spreadsheet. So you'll have the applicant, and then they go through and they say, okay, the applicant has this, the applicant has that, the applicant has this, or doesn't, and then they will be assigned a point. And then at the right-hand side, it's totaled up, and then it's made it very easy. They'll say, okay, now we're going to take all of the applicants with 5 or more points, or 4 or more points. So now they whittled it down very fairly. Everybody has gone through that process, okay? And what I love about Ms. Green now, she's not just working with them. She met with Mr. Abenis, the coordinator of guidance. Met with Mr. Perez, the coordinator of performing and fine arts. So I love the way, really without a lot of direction, the coordinators now are working with Ms. Green to realize that that is part of the process. Ms. Green should be in on reviewing the resumes, okay, and going through the process. And so they might take 50 resumes and get it down to the 20. Now, we have to talk about how, now Ms. Green is going to interviews. So after the resumes are, gone through, then they set up interviews. Now this is where Ms. Green is really going crazy, because now she's reviewing resumes and she's trying to sit on as many level 1 committees as possible, which is really, I think she does a remarkable job, because now we're hiring guidance counselors, music teachers, I just mentioned, elementary, we're going to have bilingual, we're going to have math, we're going to have science, all of these different places. And she does try to be on as many of those interviews as possible. And I will say that her voice is valued. When I spoke to the coordinators, when I speak to the assistant superintendents, they value, Ms. Green's opinion very much. And I love that she's there, because first of all, I have a tremendous amount of respect for her as an educator, but also she's, there to make sure that we are following the process fairly and appropriately. And I really think it has helped tremendously. Like I said, that, initially, I think a couple of years ago, when it first started, we had some growing pains because, we had to get used to now having a DEI consultant. But it's working. It's working tremendously. Now, Ms. Green is, like she says, she is an educator first. So that's why I think everybody values, her expertise, because she does come in, and when I talk to Ms. Palmer, Ms. Ortiz, any of them, they'll say, well, they kind of all come to an agreement as to who the primary candidates are. I don't know to this point whether there's really been any drastic disagreements, through the process, which I'm happy about, because then, we're hearing, Ms. Green's voice, we're hearing, obviously, BTA's represented, BIPSO, central administration.
And that's the part, Mr. Lochner, that I was wondering about, so I'm glad to hear that if there was some kind of difference, between what maybe Ms. Green thought would be a good candidate and what maybe the rest of the committee would think. So it doesn't seem to be, from what I'm hearing.
Again, stay close. Again, I sit in on the first round of the interviews. Once it gets to the second round, then I don't sit in on that. If I don't feel, when there was an incident when I didn't feel a person that they were getting ready to put up was qualified, I said it. Now, whether she got put up or not, I don't know. But if I didn't, to me, she didn't bring enough qualifications to the position. Okay? And I said it. And we're still friends. But we still respect each other. Okay? But I said it. Because again, as an educator, I want the best for the students of Brentwood.
And I thank you for that.
So,
Yeah,
Ms. Green,
so-
you're
So
not
I
privy to
interrupted.
what the final hiring or the, who's hired?
Okay. I'm sorry, could you say that again, please?
Are you privy to, once they get past that first round and they go to the second round, first, how many people get past?
I'm not necessarily privy to that. That's what Mr. Lochner and his cabinet. All right, so I don't sit in on that. What I do is review the resumes, sit in on the interviews, level 1 interviews, and then after that, it goes to level 2, which I really don't have anything of, to do with that. And then if I see so-and-so and so has been hired, normally what I will see it at a school board meeting or if I go on the website. Do you have any ideas?
I will say this, Ms. Green, I don't think any candidates brought to me, Ms. Green disagreed with. You may not know who, the final 2 or 3 or 4 candidates that come to level 2, but I can say with a fair degree of certainty, I don't think, any of the assistant superintendents have taken anybody to level 2 that you aren't in agreement with. You might have had, I think, at that point,
mentioned one.
level 1 has choice 1, choice 2, choice, they do rate the candidates that come to us. Maybe you might have had a disagreement as to who was 1 or who was 2, but I'm pretty sure, I don't think that you had any disagreements who came to us.
So to the point that Ms. Holder's making, right, in terms of measurable standards, that's probably something that you might want to consider that you all should talk about, because you do want to see where your
Yeah.
your
Efforts.
top three or your top two landed.
Okay.
And how many of those
Were hired.
were hired? Exactly. So that's,
Absolutely.
Yeah, that's the only
Ms.
way
Holder,
you're
is that-
truly gonna
But you can't
measure
see
it.
that in the
Yeah.
resolutions like
Yeah.
that.
I'm sorry.
So-
You will see it when it comes to.
Well, what I'm saying is why give her the additional work when that information should be coming back to her?
Right.
From this process, like, so those assistant soups or anybody who's in the process should be giving you the information in terms of who was moved on to level 2, who actually made the final cut, and then who was hired, so that you can,
You can do her own analysis.
so you could do an analysis
Right.
that's gonna be, outcome-based.
We will do that, Mr. Feliciano. I think that's a good idea. We should kind of close the circle, if you will, and give the final hire back to Betty so she can see. You know.
Who made it up out of that
Yeah.
recommendation?
Yeah, no, I think it's a great point.
And is that information that's provided to, I used to be in the hiring committee before being on the Board of Education, and that information wasn't provided to us. I think that's helpful, in regards to, okay, these are the people that went through the interview process. This is the person that made it.
Right.
My question to you, Betty, is that, I think that we also need some type of mentorship program for those teachers coming in to our district, just so that they feel, included, welcome, belong, all those type of things.
Right. We do have a mentoring program that actually is pretty robust. And we do offer mentoring even to teachers who are in the second, third, fourth year. We actually have done it for tenured teachers who might be struggling, might have a new course or a new grade level, and we've done that. But we can always look to even bolster it even more, because I agree with you, it's a,
Right.
it's a tough.
And it's just in general, all over the place, that you do see, teachers of color that need that extra, push, or that they feel, that they're actually leaving the teaching field because of, for whatever reason, And then my next question is, are you involved by any chance, I know you're involved with the hiring, but are you also involved with termination?
I'm sorry, I didn't hear you.
The
Am I?
terminations, or when people leave the district, the reasons why they leave the district,
No.
Is that something that we should look into?
Well, you would have to just expand the job description of the DEI consultant. If you think that's necessary to have them do an exit interview, that's something that we, right, an exit interview, not uncommon, to do.
So Brentwood currently doesn't have
We do.
exit interviews?
We have it on a very, informal basis, but we don't have many teachers that, are leaving us. We do have teachers who move on for other positions. For example, this year, we did hire a lady that we had such a high regard for. She was a minority candidate. She was doing a terrific job, but left us for an assistant principal job. And so you're not going to necessarily do an exit interview for that. I find that most teachers that do leave us, if they're not retiring, they're leaving for other positions.
But an exit interview also can collect other
Absolutely,
information,
data.
you know, things that are going on in the district
Sure.
that teachers may notice. So we do it at
Right.
my place of employment, and it's really good, and it really it tells us what we need to improve upon.
Right,
Shows us where the holes are and how to plug them.
right, exactly.
So I don't think that we don't necessarily have to expand the scope of work in order to get that done, Ms. Green. So if that's something that you could fit into your schedule, I think the exit interviews from the district is
Right.
a great idea.
Right.
And then having that information or having, that information come back to you is certainly within the scope of what it is that we'd like to hear, because, you are working for the board, and any information that you get that could be shared would be wonderful. So I just, I think that that's a great improvement.
I just want to ask, just to clarify, I know we're talking in general about exit interviews, but because we're dealing with the DEI component, I would think they would be especially interested in the exit reasons that come out in that exit interview. For employees that are employees of color.
Yep.
So we would like to know if there's anything in our structure maybe that's not supportive enough, maybe you mentioned mentorship. Is there anything that we could change to maybe make candidates of color feel more welcome or have more success within our schools?
But I think those exit interviews would have to go across the board for everyone in terms of,
Right.
unless
No, I
there's a
agree, but
specific reason.
But Robert, what I'm saying is exit interview all across, but I think Betty's
Yes.
input would be especially
Yeah.
necessary when we're dealing with candidates of color. Because I could think of a couple, during my time on the board,
Yeah.
of,
In the New York
teachers of
State
color who
report,
have not made it. And I would like to have
You know why?
some kind of deeper look into those reasons why.
all right, could you please, I'm at the season of my life when, if you're going to give me instructions, please give me exactly what you want me to do, or let me reiterate what I heard.
So we are discussing it now. So we're talking about exit interviews. And my point, because I know that if you're not overwhelmed now, you will be. We're asking a lot of you. And I think specifically, our reason for having a DEI consultant is so that we could strengthen our staff with teachers of color. So if that's the concern, I think the results of those exit interview that are specific to teachers of color should be of particular, not just interest to you, but that those are things that, should be funneled to you so that you can start to build a profile.
Okay.
I also want to let you folks know that there's actually now 2 staff members that I would like, Ms. Green to liaison with. They also now have a DEI certificate. There are 2 administrators in the district that I think, I only found out a couple of days ago they have the certification, so I'd love for them to, liaison with Ms. Green, and they can talk about, what they've learned, their strategies. And obviously, they're administrators, so they're also, responsible for hiring as well, so
I
it'll be
think that's a great
terrific.
idea. So we're building a team.
We're building a team. I mean, you should know there's a lot of other things that are obviously occurring. We're building, I am also very proud of how many, Brentwood grads that we are hiring. This is just I do disagree with the numbers. I know the numbers are on, Newsday, and I certainly don't want to, say that it's, far different than what because the message is clear. The message is what you're trying to say is clear. But I do disagree somewhat with the numbers, and I'd love to see them straightened out, but it would not be significantly different.
I have a question. Would Human Resources have the exact information?
Well, you have to understand the way it was collected prior to just a few years ago is really just a visual inspection, number one, or a way that they, identify themselves. So self-identify. So there's, it's not, it's kind of, to put it another way, it's an imperfect science, if you will. And, so the numbers are a little bit off.
Okay.
And also, when we say educators, are we including administrators in that? And that's one of the,
Okay, again, I got my information from Newsday, and I'm not sure if if administration was included on it. I had looked at another source, community, whatever, and it basically gave me the same numbers that.
Yeah, Ms. Green, so I want to say that I've
It's
also
just
looked at these, and it
teachers,
doesn't
right.
include administrators. This is strictly the teaching staff,
Right.
exactly.
Okay.
I want to say that that's kind of the trend where, so our numbers in terms of administrators are just definitely much different than what it is that we have in terms of our teaching staff. I just wanted to add that, even within the teaching staff, our, just from my visual observation, our teaching staff and those minorities that have been identified are also, tend to trend in a certain direction. Like, we have a lot of Latino teachers because we have such a huge bilingual department. We have such a huge need for the ESL, back in the day, ESL teachers who are now, called something else, but that bilingual department. So that is where you're going to find a lot of those, Latinx community. And I want to say that, the diversity has to extend across all columns, including the general ed classrooms that we have in the district. So, even within those numbers, even within the bar graph that you projected to us, we can make some improvements, and we should make those improvements. You mentioned OLAS. You mentioned changing
Changing the algorithm.
looking at the algorithm.
Okay, some other data that I found out. This is a national problem or issue. The majority of teachers in America are female Caucasians. Okay, that's the first thing. If you're going to look on OLAS and change the algorithm, okay, then, like I said, I called, I looked, I did my research. Again, change the algorithm. What are you looking for? I don't know. When I called and I spoke to someone and asked, could I ask for an African-American female, they said you can't do that because of a possible lawsuit. But there are other ways that you can identify, I guess, people of color. My concern is the numbers that we don't have. According to the numbers, I don't know how many Middle Eastern educators we have. I don't know how many indigenous educators. 9 Asians. The one thing I had wanted to say to the board, 12 years ago, 13 years ago, the majority of your administrators were Caucasian males and females. I give you much credit for diversifying the administration staff, because when I grew up in Brentwood, it was only Caucasian males, okay? But you've done an excellent job in diversifying your administration. Now I'd like to see that come down to the classroom, because as I said before, one of my goals as your DEI consultant is to make sure that every child feels comfortable and sees a reflection of themselves. Representation matters. Okay? My daughter told me not to tell any personal stories, so I won't tell any. But representation matters.
Yeah. So, I'm going to try to add a little something to that. And this is this idea, this concept of one of your slides that referenced favoritism, right? And favoritism to me is very, very normal for any group, whether it's white, black, Latino, Asian, Middle Eastern, this idea that, that groups look within their own group or their own culture, their own society, to make these recommendations for various positions. That's normal. That happens, in the black community, in the white community, the brown community. It's everywhere. And this idea of this mission that we're on in terms of diversification, that has to be with intention. That has to be intentional. So if you are on this mission to diversify, all we're talking about, and I want to just add, what we're trying to do is create an opportunity so that more of these diverse groups are applying to these positions, and that they are being interviewed for these positions, and that they are giving these fair chances at getting these jobs. And I think that ultimately is what we're talking about here. We're not looking to discriminate against any one particular group. What we're trying to do is open it up so that more people are applying. And I think that ultimately is, what is going to be, I think, the task at hand. If we can go back to one of the slides, there was a slide there, Mr. Connor, that had the percentages of students who could get through the school system without seeing.
Robert, while she's looking, I just want to ask you where you saw there about favoritism. I'm trying to
There
find
was
it.
one
It's-
for,
Which of the slides?
guess it's about
It was
11.
implicit biases.
Yeah.
I
That's
think
like,
part of the major issue as well as an employer,
You want to go find your favoritism
as an employer, we're not allowed or technically
Fair enough.
allowed to ask nationality
Yep.
with, to an applicant.
Right.
So that kind of, in a way, that hinders our ability to kind of measure, give a true assessment of who's a minority and who's not.
Right. No, that's the difficult part,
And
right?
that's really truly a part, because some people identify, who are Latino, who identify as being white, and there's some Latinos who identify as being African American. So there's a lot of variables in there.
Yes, when I was saying the numbers before, that's the category that I disagree with. I think you had 247 or 288 Latinos, and I do believe that number is far greater because of, exactly what you're saying, Eileen. Is that the-
1.5%?
I actually was looking at the number, 247.
That's the slide right there.
Because
Yeah.
truthfully, in the Hispanic Latino community, specifically Puerto Ricans is a ethnicity. We
Right.
don't consider ourselves white or black.
Right.
We're Puerto Rican. So when you're asking us if we identify with black or white, it's neither, but we're forced to choose something now.
Right.
So,
Well, exactly. That's what we found, obviously, with students, and that's what we found with teachers as well. So that's the number that I think is much different than the one that you have here. Again, I'm not splitting hairs. I'm just saying
because
that
I'm just concerned,
that is an issue as to
I'm
what they
concerned
check off.
about reporting, and that's to say, Ms. Betty, your numbers are wrong. I'm not saying that at all. What I'm saying is, the system is already working against what we're
Right.
trying to accomplish in a way. No, it is. I'm not going to say in a way.
Yeah.
It is. Because you have, if we set the algorithm, right, and some of it can be based on last name, right? It's generic last name. You can
Right.
say Lopez, Perez, Santiago is Latino, but Bosch is a German last name, but Puerto Ricans have German ancestry. So
Right.
they have a German last name, but their ethnicity could be Colombian, Puerto Rican,
Sure.
so on and so forth, and African Americans as well. So how do you kind of isolate that?
Yeah, that's the difficult part. Obviously, you could take that a step further. You have, it could be an Irish last name, and
so that's
the
what I'm
wife
saying.
could be, Latino,
Yeah.
could be black, and then
Welsh,
has an Irish last
French,
name.
Portuguese, you
Right.
name it, we have it. But that's what I'm saying. It's like the system is already set up to prohibit us from achieving the success that Ms. Betty's trying to achieve. So how do we navigate throughout this system, specifically OLAS, to give us the correct
Right.
algorithm?
Well, I think what our goal, though, you're right, you're pointing out the flaws, but we're still moving ahead, because I think when we get them in the room and we're interviewing candidates, hopefully we have a large enough pool that we do have candidates of color, and then we're taking it from there.
Right, but when they submit their resume, you don't know.
You don't always know.
You don't
No.
know.
No.
But I
That's
think-
my point.
But I think one of the things that we can measure is, and this goes back to the point that Ms. Burgos was bringing up earlier, is that measurable standard. So total number of applicants, right? And those applicants that are being vetted, how many of those vetted applicants are interviewed? And if you're kind of doing an informal evaluation in terms of those candidates that are being interviewed,
Right.
how many of those interviewed are minorities? And that's what you want to try to continue to.
And I understand that, but what I'm pointing out is Miss Betty's conversation indicating that when she called OLAS, they said there's a way to kind of navigate the system and put in an algorithm to get the output that you want.
Everything, this is my idea, if you change the algorithms, okay, you'll probably come up with something different, all right? But like I said, not this past Friday, but two Friday, whenever, Ms. Palmer and I went through over 168
Right.
resumes with the rubric, identifying what the school district needed, and then we went back over it again, and if I'm right, we chose maybe 16, 18 candidates who will be interviewed, I think this week or next week. All right, so it is a process. But we want our children to see themselves, and this is a diverse community.
Yeah.
So, in my opinion, a Middle Eastern child should be able to see somebody that looks just like him or her.
Agreed, 100%.
Okay, I don't know, I could not get those stats. I certainly would love to get those stats to know exactly where we are.
So do you look at per building,
I'm sorry.
your ethnicity or your breakdown per building? So you did say that, certain schools don't have.
I'm not sure where I would get that information from,
Right.
per race.
No, per building.
Per
Like-
building.
Per building.
Oh, per building?
You mentioned that some buildings don't have.
Right, you have 5 elementary schools who have no African Americans in it. Okay? According to this, you have, and I won't name the school name, you have one elementary school that has one multiracial person, you have one middle school that has one multiracial person. According to these stats, you have a total of 9 Asians. You have one school that has one school that has one school that has 3, and one school that has 1. The rest have 0. Okay, according to this, and I got my information from New State, you have Black or African American. You have one elementary school that has 3, one that has 2, one that has 1, one that has 1, one that has 2, one that has 1. Okay, so you have at least, hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 schools in the district that don't have any.
So, Ms. Green, I am going to say that I've read a lot of those Newsday articles, and a lot of them quote the Hofstra study that was done about a year or 2 years ago.
2019.
Yeah, and that's where they get a lot of the information.
Okay.
That was a very, very in-depth study. And I don't have the website, but I know that study is still available. Correct?
What I did was I downloaded or copied so that I could be able to sift through the information, because I certainly didn't want to bring anything that was not documented. So I downloaded the report from New York State with 240 pages. I downloaded the Hofstra report. I downloaded from Connecticut to see what they were doing. Not downloaded, but printed. All right, printed. I didn't download because I'm old school. I need to go through with my marker and everything else. All right, so I did download that study. I did read it. Okay, I give Brentwood credit. You have 30. There are some school districts that have none. None.
So I did also see an article in regards to our, growing our own, and encouraging our students to go into teaching. I thought that was
I read that article last night. It was a Newsday. I think it was like May 1st or May 2nd. I read that article last night where we may need to, again, grow our own. And there was a young man, his last name was Gonzalez. He's a senior. He wants to become a gym teacher. He said, it said in the paper, I'll be back in 4 years. Okay? And that's what we want to do. Now you don't want everybody from your district, but at least 50%. I'm just prejudiced against Brentwood. But you want your children to come back. I was successful, and I promised my daughter I wouldn't tell any stories. But I was successful as an educator in this district because I've been here long enough, and if I saw somebody who looked like somebody, and they were acting like they didn't have no sense, I said, come here, baby. Is so-and-so and so your grandma? And they go, do you want me to come to your house? Nah, Ms. Green, it's okay. Because I'm from here. I understood the culture. Okay, no, you're not coming here acting like you don't have no sense. And I was hardest on the kids from Regis Park because that's where I'm from. Kids from Regis Park didn't get away with nothing. because I knew what they were up against and what they needed to have in order to be successful. Okay, so growing our own, there's nothing wrong with that, and bringing in other qualified people. I'm learning that New York City does a very different job in educating the educators than maybe Long Island does. And we've gotten a couple really, really good educators from New York City because it's a whole different mindset. Our goal is to make sure that we get the best qualified. First of all, you got to be qualified. 2, we don't want you skipping anything. And number 3, you need, because you can be qualified and still don't fit. You got to be able to fit. How do you see our children? I have a hard time when I ask, or when somebody asks you a question about Brentwood and you don't know an answer. And please don't act like my kids are, you doing them a favor by coming here. Not so. I don't care how qualified you are. If you have that attitude, you don't belong here. And with that, any other questions?
Yeah, you can't go just yet, Ms. Green, I'm sorry. And Kalia, if you're out there watching this, listen, she tried, all right? We're all going to stand with her.
I have a question. Is there anywhere in this district that you could get a breakdown of the male minority teachers?
You know what, if I can just jump in there. So it's a conversation that Ms. Green and I had when she said she was going to present this. So race is just one component of diversity, right? We are talking about that right now, right? Because that is the topic of the day. But diversity includes all those other things that she had mentioned and outlined in her report. So at some point, you know, again, I'm sorry to jump in there, is that this report, this conversation is going to expand into those areas, and that is where we hope to go to look at, you know, what the male versus female. I think Ms. Green, you already did some of that research already.
Only 2% of teachers are African American males, and what is bothering me is that they're leaving the field. And my question is why? Why don't African American males want to be educators? The fastest growing educators in America are Hispanics. Okay? Those are the fastest growing, like I said, I was combing through reports, etc. Those are the fastest growing educators in America are Hispanics. And that was in the report in New York State. So my question is, not only because of African American males, and representation is important, and every male child needs to see a male who looks like him to know that I can do this, okay? This is a big field, and this is a new field, and we're all learning together, okay? And our goal, let me reiterate it one more time, our goal is to make sure that we have the best possible staff. Like I said before, wouldn't it be wonderful if Brentwood School District, we known for a whole lot of stuff, but wouldn't it be wonderful if we could say we have the most diverse, qualified staff in the state? I think big. Not just on Long Island, but in the state. Where could our children go if they could see people? And I'm going to put this plug in. I think one of your valedictorians or salutatorians is Hispanic. You want to know why? Because they've seen Hispanic males take leadership roles. Boys need to see boys doing what boys do. Okay? So that's why you see the increase of that minority rising, because they see it. Let's do that for all of our students in Brentwood. I believe strongly in Brentwood. I'm here, I ain't going nowhere until I die. I will be here. But let's do that for all of our students, so that when they leave here, the young man made my heart feel good. He says, I'm coming back. And that's what we need. We need educators, young people who are coming back. So he said, in 4 years, I will be back. And if I'm still here in 4 years, and if we see his, in fact, there was a young lady today, and I won't give out her name, but she's a Brentwood High School graduate, okay? We interviewed her the other day, and she's one of, and this is all I'm gonna say, because Rich will tell you, they have never said, Betty Green said anything, so you know what, I'm gonna keep my mouth closed. But, she's a candidate.
So,
Okay? Any other questions?
yeah.
Did she say I'm back?
Huh?
Did she say I'm back?
No, she represented very well.
Very nice.
Okay, I would also like to change the image of who we are.
Yeah.
Because we're a good community. And we always have been. And we're not perfect, but we good.
So I just wanted to make a comment. So some of the things that Mr. Loshner had outlined in terms of, how this process works are specific outcomes, right? It was the goal when this board decided to change the hiring policy to get that process that Mr. Loshner outlined, like I said before, I believe that diversity and all these things that we are, challenging ourselves to do, require intention, right? And what we did as a board, and I think that we should all be very, very proud of, is what we did with that hiring policy. We made the changes in the hiring policy that I think that, at least I believe, would increase the chances of having a diversified pool. We did away with that, perpetual, we're hiring for every position all the time, because I think that it was disheartening for people to, put in an application, never know what position was available. It was, and it's a point that, community members have made, we didn't know, the community, the people that were looking for jobs didn't know what truly was available. We made the changes in the hiring policy so that central administrators had a greater say in terms of the actual resumes that made it down to the building level. Of course, with the central administrative team, your input, so that the process is now resumes come in through OLAS, or at least this is what I'm hoping that the process is, right? So resumes come in through OLAS.
All of the resumes,
All of them,
because
yeah.
I look.
Yeah, so they get vetted to see if they meet the qualifications. Then central administration takes a look at those resumes and with your input, but a lot of it has to do with the department heads and the central administrators. And those resumes go down to the building level in terms of the candidates that are being vetted.
What I would like to say is that I would like to be able to, I've been in some elementary schools, but I've not been in all elementary schools. And I would like to be able to go into all elementary schools and sit in on the hiring process.
There isn't any reason why you would be prevented from doing that.
Okay,
Not at all.
I have probably been invited to 5. I don't know if the other ones have had to hire people or not, but I've been probably invited to 5, and I won't say the 5 that they are. And I'm thankful for the principals who value my opinion, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But there are some elementary schools that I have not been in. I would like to go down and sit and see what is going on.
Ms. Green, if you could stop right there. Does the board have any problem, does anybody on this board have any problem with Ms. Green just inviting herself? Because you
Robert, I
work,
was going to suggest that we create a process where we can make that information available to Ms. Green.
Yeah,
So that, whatever fits in your schedule or whatever, school you have in mind that you want to visit, that you know when those interviews are being conducted.
I just want to know when the interviews are, and I want to be able to sit in.
Well, yeah, I think once you know, I think what you're asking is, do we feel okay with you going in on the interview?
I don't have a problem. I don't have a problem. If they let me know in enough time, then I change my schedule to make sure that I'm able to accommodate Brentwood.
So,
All right.
Mr. Lochner, is there a way that we can generalize the calendar of interviews? I know it's a moving, fluid process, but can we have like a skeleton calendar.
Yeah, it is, let me just say a couple of things, and I'll get back to that. You guys should know, and I think you do, but it's obviously the time to have this conversation, that, since I've been superintendent and with this board, that the hiring process has changed dramatically. There are committees, although there were committees prior to this, me being here, I'm not going to say there weren't, but now every school has a committee, okay, has a hiring committee made up of administrators, teachers, and a community member. That's every committee, every school. Every administrative, hire goes through the level 1, level 2 committee. As Mr. Feliciano said too, we adjusted something. This is actually has been a dramatic change. Resumes aren't sent up to us. They come through central administration. We vet it, now we vet it with Betty, and then we push it down to the buildings and we say, here's the body of teachers, here's the 20 teachers that the elementary can hire. Or here's your math teachers that you can hire at the high school. The reason I want to bring this up is because it didn't work that way all of the time. Is that, taking the secondary, for example, which I spent a long time there, is that a phone call could be made or a resume could be dropped off to a department head, I'm talking years ago, and now, okay, wow, this is cool, department head might interview that person, send it to the principal, here's the principal, might put a little small committee together, and then it goes up. And that's the way it actually worked as I was the math department head. That frequently it happened that way. And then, obviously the final step would be you would meet an assistant superintendent before being hired. But the danger there was that you didn't go through the entire pool of applicants. Okay, it could be where, hey, let me drop my resume off at, I'm not saying it was, unethical, I don't want to say that, but let me drop my resume off at this person's desk, and, it would make its way through the chain. And I think that's what we wanted to change, when we came in. So that's huge. Now, that's separate from, I'm not talking about diversity, I'm not talking about hiring, black, Latino, white, I'm talking about the actual hiring process has changed dramatically, where it is, HR,
Structure.
third floor, vetted, now with Betty's help, vetted, pushed down to the schools, you guys interview this pool of candidates, send back up, and then, just so you know, if it's on the teacher level, the final hiring process goes back to the assistant superintendent. They meet with that candidate, before it gets sent to me. So that process is really something to be applauded about. I mean, it really is a change. And I'm not saying it was, it was a different way and a different time. And I'm very proud of that. And I have to be honest with you, the cabinet administration, they've all bought into it. Like, this is the way we're doing it now. So everything is above board. No one can say, I'm going to get a leg up because I know this person or I know that person. You got to go through the process.
I think creating the rubric is a really big accomplishment.
It was a very
We
big
can,
accomplishment.
look at things objectively.
Right. I also want to say too that we actually do hire a lot of our perm subs are also Brentwood residents and graduates, and I'm really excited about that. So that process, I'm very proud that we have put that in. Now, getting back to your question, I will say that all of the principals do know that you should be involved. Like, I know the high school does, I know the elementary schools, and I know you've been involved in, lots of that. I'm not making excuses. I'm going to find out from Ms. Palmer in terms of the elementary schools, how we can make sure you're involved. I will say some of the elementary schools may not last year have hired a specific teacher, because what we've done is we've actually collapsed certain, we might take an education, a general ed teacher from Laurel Park because they don't have enough students there, so we'll ship that Laurel Park teacher over to, Hemlock. So Hemlock actually didn't hire somebody, I'm using an example here, and that, well, they might not actually have a hiring committee, because they actually had teachers shifted to them. So I'm not sure, like, all 11 elementary schools are all going to hire teachers. Now, the bilingual teachers what very frequently will happen would be, it will be a committee, and some principals will be on the committee, one committee. They'll do the interviews of the bilingual teachers. Now, I'm still talking about elementary here. Hopefully, you're a part of that. But then those teachers who are hired will be sent out to different elementary schools. So that could be part of the reason, that the situation like that could come up. But, I will talk to the cabinet and we'll talk to the principals to make sure if you are having an individual hiring committee at your building, we would like Ms. Green to be a part of it.
Or at
We
least make
also
the
would like,
information available, so that she can come if she's available, right?
Pardon?
At least make the information available to you.
Yeah.
So that you know when the committees are.
Right.
Meeting. I think that's what we're asking.
Right,
and you also mentioned a community person.
right.
There's been situations I've asked, very involved parents. And I'm like, oh, have you ever been invited to a hiring committee interview?
Right.
And they said, no.
Well,
Which is
if you
odd.
remember, you guys here as a board actually have approved, parents to be on the committee. I know that we've had that discussion over the year, and we have a few parents that have been part of those committees that I've pushed
So-
out to the buildings, and that's who they're using.
Is that list given to the building?
Yeah, it's generally speaking, again, I am sure that's not everybody. I'm sure there are some elementary schools that are using their, PTA president, for example, or
Yeah, I was
something
going to
along those
say, I
lines.
think they should work,
It
whenever
could be, I mean,
possible with the PTAs and
it also
parents
could
are
be more than
ready
one
to-
community member. I mean,
Right.
there's no reason why it couldn't be more than one.
Right.
I have
Yeah,
a
they
could be
question.
rotated.
Yep.
This question is for Betty. How many, in the level 1 interviews, how many community people have sat in on that? Because I gave a list of retired educators that actually live in Brentwood to sit in on the interviews, and none of them have been called.
Yeah, no, I have not. I think one time, 2 years ago, Valerie Brown, we sat in on, and that was when Dr.
Yes.
Keel was here. Other than that, I've not seen any.
And she was a retired Brentwood teacher.
Right, right.
And I thought
But are
that
you saying
person was
You
excellent.
haven't seen the retired administrators, or you haven't seen any community members?
I haven't seen retired community
Or
members.
teachers?
Right, and the names that I had recommended were educators that that are retired, that live in Brentwood. And
Have you seen,
some-
I do
have you seen
think also,
community
though,
members
that-
to?
I think every school has sort of like their own culture and their own,
No, I'm
to
talking about
me-
the level 1 interviews.
Yeah, but I'm talking about the level 1 interviews as well, at the school levels, that I think at the school level, the principals and whoever is involved in that committee should be reflective of that school's community, that school's culture.
No, that's, and I want to disagree, respectfully disagree. That's what policy is for. So we're trying to, implement policy that is district-wide. I don't think that a school building.
We haven't set a policy that says that you must only pick community members from this list. We haven't done that.
Oh, no, I think,
So
no,
principals
I
right
don't
now
think that it
have
has,
the option of,
but what I'm
picking
saying is
them.
that the policy itself requires that community members be involved. So
So I'm not saying that they shouldn't be, Robert. What I'm saying is that that principal and those teachers and that committee and that building level should pick parents that they feel are going to be able to pick teachers that they feel are going to be fitting into their school culture and their school community. That's what I'm saying. So not to negate, whatever list any of us give in, but I may give a name that, may not be appropriate for whatever school is being interviewed at the time. And as a parent, I would want somebody to know the school community and know the school culture and include that as part of the criteria for
Are
picking
you
the
talking
teachers.
about when they interview at the building level?
At the building levels,
Okay,
yes.
I'm talking
I am
about at the
teachers.
level 1 interviews.
But aren't the building levels considered
Yes,
level
yes,
ones
they are.
also?
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think Ms.
So-
Moore is speaking about administrative hires.
Yes.
We have a level
Okay,
1
I'm
and
sorry,
level 2
I was
there.
talking about teacher
Right.
hires at the building
They're
level. I thought
referring
that's
to
what we were
level
talking
1.
about.
for teachers as well.
We're talking about building level, so we're
Right.
really talking teachers, I think.
So the point that Mr. Lochner was just referencing, and that was kind of what I was referring to in terms of favoritism, where that resume was handed off to, somebody that was within the district. And that, again, that happens in every culture, and in every group of people. There's I want to say, a quite normal tendency to, for groups to look for people who are similar within their own group, to get that, leg up, or that, that inside track to getting that job. And I also am incredibly proud of the work that we did as a board in terms of the changes that Mr. Lochner has outlined, and the ones that I tried to also impress. There's also that idea that Mr. Lochner just said, that, when we go through this process, this hiring process, that building level interview still comes back to central administrators. That final word in terms of who it is that gets that final hire still comes back to Mr. Lochner and his cabinet.
Right.
And I think that that's also incredibly important, so that we are trying to, combat that idea of favoritism, because to the point that Ms. Burgos was making, so, we have to get out of our comfort zone in order to succeed with this idea of diversity. So if we are going to, pick people who are, at least in my opinion, pick people who are very similar in terms of this approach, this culture, the culture of the building, I think that may lend itself towards, a less favorable outcome in terms of what it is that we're trying to accomplish here. The other thing that's in that policy that I think is just really, really big is that, that idea that, that we were able to put in writing that, our residents, our Brentwood grads, all things being equal, should be given some extra weight in terms of that open position. This idea of seeing, and the example that you had given, Ms. Green, was, a Middle Eastern in the life of that child who's coming through our school district. We do have a lot of Middle Eastern employees, except they're not teachers. We do have a lot of, Latino employees, except, there's a small group that are teachers. A lot of them, are TAs, kitchen workers, and so on and so forth. So we, as a parent, as a father, right, and because I'm a lifelong resident of Brentwood, I want my child, my neighbor's child, to see that person who's similar to themselves in front of the classroom. And I'm not trying to take away, I'm not trying to diminish, those people who have those jobs, but there is an intrinsic value in what it is that we're discussing right now. So that idea that we were able to put in our policy, and again, this is something that we should all be proud of, that there is an acknowledgement, of a applicant who happens to be a Brentwood resident, applicant who happens to be a Brentwood graduate. I have to share one of my own stories, Ms. Green, right? Only to drive Kalia crazy, right? When I was growing up in Brentwood, we did have, teachers who were neighbors, and that dynamic has completely changed in Brentwood. I think, to the detriment of the community. I want to say that, this idea that, that we would have a Ms. Green know who my parents were, and when she got home, she was going to walk across the street and tell on me, was terrifying. That was, and I'm just saying this because, I also grew up in Regis Park, and we were at some point probably neighbors, I don't know. And so this idea that, that we are valuing residents who happen to be graduates at the same time, or graduates who are residents, I think that is kind of like one of those missing ingredients in terms of, bringing this community up to the next level. That accountability, that idea that, children are running into their teachers or administrators at the grocery store, or, over, in the local church. I just really, I can't emphasize how important that is to me, because I knew how important it was to me when I was growing up, and, you know, what that meant, that we would be going over to a friend's house whose mom was a teacher in the school. And, you know, and she had eyes on you. Not only that, but, you know, there's another piece, you know, the moms who are teachers, parents who are teachers in our district will not allow for failure. They will do everything to make sure that this district stays in that mode of excellence, in that thought, in that energy of excellence. And that's what I believe, you know, comes with this idea. So with that being said, I mean, I think that we should all celebrate the policy that we have. This was a group effort, and I'm excited to see what the future holds, because I think that this is a really, really great start. Mr. Lotion, I want to give you thanks, and to your cabinet, because, you know, this doesn't work. This doesn't succeed without the buy-in of your, you know, the team, the central administrators team, you know, this communication that you have, and it's just wonderful to hear that you did acknowledge that it was a rough start, but now that you're kind of in a very good rhythm, I think that this is something that we should all celebrate.
Yeah, I think also these changes don't happen overnight, and I know you said that yourself in screen, so I think we should be proud of our baby steps that we've taken, and those steps are growing, and I think that that's something to build on. And it's a natural, you know, what we did with prioritizing perhaps some of our community members fits into that grow your own schema, where, you know, we are encouraging, you know, our students to go to college, get trained, and then come back and get hired. And I think that's a natural process that does take time, but we need to emphasize that and really start it, you know, at the lower levels, at the high school level, make sure that we're encouraging students to join the teaching profession.
Yeah, and you know, there's one thing that I just failed to mention is that, you know, New York State there's legislation before, you know, or in some of the chambers there about this idea of, you know, having a diversity officer, making sure that, you know, that this is done intentionally. And that hasn't, you know, it hasn't come to fruition, it hasn't passed, it hasn't, you know, become law. But here we are as a Brentwood school district, you know, already, you know, in the second, third year maybe of this process. So that, again, is, you know, something to be celebrated. You know, it's not going to happen overnight. And to Ms. Burgos' point, you know, this took us a long time to get where we are right now. It's going to take us a long time to get out. But diversity has to be intentional. It has to be. That's right. It has to be a goal to be met. And Mr. Wilson, again, I thank you for your role.
Thank you. Thank you.
In all of this.
It's been a great collaborative effort, and you know, we are focused on it. I mean, we really are. In terms of the graduates, I mean, we do give them consideration. As a matter of fact, that rubric that Ms. Green and, you know, was speaking about before, that's one of the boxes we check off, and that's how you kind of move along to get higher points. The graduates, I love hiring our graduates, and I think everybody in the district feels the same way.
I have a copy of the proposed legislation that's sitting in the Education Committee in New York State, and part of it has to do with they want a diversity officer in every school district in New York State. And the fact that we are ahead of the game with that, we should be proud of that. And hopefully it's sitting in, as I said, in the Education Committee, and hopefully it'll be passed at the next session.
Right.
Any other questions?
Any questions from the audience?
Sure.
So, diversity.
And you know what? Can you might as well just state your name?
William Moss, Brentwood resident, former teacher here in the district, and Brentwood parent. Inclusion. One of the critiques I do have of tonight is that this room should have a lot more people in it. And we make a lot of robocalls about other things. We make a lot of invitations about other things. The community voice, if you really want it to be heard, it needs to be invited. And that's one of the biggest issues with diversity, equity, and inclusion in Brentwood schools. 2 years ago, we had this discussion about the NAACP members possibly being part of the interview committees. I did the dance, I submitted the names, submitted them again. This is 2 years now, not one member of the NAACP has been asked to be on any interview committee. So I understand that progress has been made, and believe you me, I appreciate the changes and advances that have been made in the hiring policy. But policy without production is not enough. And there has to be enforcement, and there has to be a spirit behind the policy that makes it work. And so without true inclusion of the community, you won't get inclusion of the community. In an event like this, we have a presentation, and you have a diverse community like Brentwood, where people of different races, backgrounds, genders, sexualities, etc., are living amongst us. Professions living amongst us could have been in this audience helping to bring ideas to our diversity consultant. This is a miss. And I would just hope that if there are future conversations like this, that the community is directly involved.
Yeah, Mr. Moss, thank you. And you know what, you make a very, very good point, and I'm going to try to combine that with one of the things that I think that we all have to acknowledge is that Ms. Green is spread very, very thin. And you're doing a wonderful job, but there are so many places to be at the same time. And as I was sitting here listening to you, I was like, okay, where do we go from here? And Ms. Green, I know that you're going to make it to 180, 190 years old, right? But what happens when Ms. Green is not here, right? What happens when Ms. Green is not here? So you just brought up a point that I'm going to try to marry and just follow me, right, as it goes along, is that why not use Ms. Green as your point person to get some of those NAACP members on some of these committees, these interview committees at the building levels, where she's not going to be able to attend because you can only be at one place at one time. So if you developed a relationship with Ms. Green in terms of understanding what the process is, coming up with a calendar that Mr. Lochner would make available to Ms. Green and say, hey, this is what's happening. You're doing this on a volunteer effort. I mean, we all are, right? These are the interviews that are available or that are coming up in the following week. Ms. Green, can you coordinate with this? And, we're going to move a community member forward into that interview committee, but working with her to coordinate this effort.
I think we need to create a structure for that, though, because Ms. Green doesn't necessarily pick the committee members. I think we need.
No. But what I'm saying is that could be a modified version of what it is that I'm.
Right.
All I'm doing is just thinking out loud. So if that group of NAACP members, right, was presented as an option for Ms. Green in terms of making, setting them forth as observers or as, participants in the interview process, that might satisfy what is it you're looking for and assist with Ms. Green's efforts in this process. Just a thought.
Right. I just don't want to miss the point that Mr. Moss made, which I think is very well made, about not having adequate, announcement to the community about this meeting. And I must say that even we as board members only found out that Ms. Green was coming probably just this week. So I do think that we need to do better in terms of, getting ourselves together and actually including, and I agree 100%. We do need to do better in announcing things in advance, including and emphasizing, and really stressing, what the meetings are about and that we want community involvement. Because there was no announcement about what the purpose. It just said special meeting and workshop, and there was no detail about what was going to be discussed today. And I agree, I think some other people would have turned out if they had known.
Yeah, so
We will take that to heart. Thank you.
Yeah, the idea of the workshop was on the calendar, except what.
There was no
what-
detail.
Exactly, what the detail,
Yeah.
and unfortunately, this developed in the last, week and a half. So there is, exactly, there is that
But,
piece.
to my earlier point, and it's an honest, invitation from Ms. Green, and we will structure it into our meetings moving forward, that we will have a dialogue, an active dialogue in
Yeah.
the future.
Yeah, so it wasn't, there was no intention to not give as much announcement as possible. It just, this was a workshop, we didn't have anything on. We thought it was going to be an early night, and this was the best available time. So, but listen, this is great, this is a great start. I absolutely love the fact that we are here, we're meeting, and that this dialogue is continuing.
If you really want to think about it, I think Ms. Green should probably come in the fall, because our hiring season is really, upon us. And, if you really want to see the outcomes, I think that we have we probably have a fairly large class of teachers that we have to hire, across the spectrum from elementary to secondary. So I think Ms. Green comes back, now she has a very finite group of people to take a look at to see, if we've accomplished or we've moved towards our goal, not accomplish our goal. But I really think you guys should ask to have Ms. Green back in September, October, or something like that, and really just look at this finite set and see, how we progressed.
One other question. Once a candidate has moved forward and they have been hired, I'd like to keep a record of who has been hired. And I don't know if you can or not, but why certain candidates were not hired. Okay, and then the mentoring process to make sure that those that we hire are mentored in such a way that they want to stay into education. And yes, we are looking for males of all color. We need males.
We need to start with our high school students.
We need to start with our high school students. And we need males. Okay, so that's one of my goals during the summer, is to look for males. You don't normally hear anything from me, so I'm not going to start it tonight, but that's what we're looking for. We're looking for males, we're looking for people of color, we're looking for qualified.
We have to bring back the prestige to the
I'm sorry.
teaching industry. We have to bring back the prestige to the teaching industry.
Yes,
I remember there was a time, when I was growing up, you wanted to be a policeman, a firefighter, a nurse, or a teacher.
right.
Now we're just instilling being a doctor, a lawyer.
Let's start it around the mid-'80s. I don't know what happened to the society then. But, this is doable
Yes.
if we work together. Again, I want to thank Mr. Feliciano and Mrs. Moore for contacting me. This has been, as a seasoned woman, this has been one of the joys of my life, that I get a chance to continue to work in the district that I grew up in and that I love. Are there any questions?
There's another question in
Go
the
ahead.
back.
Paul. You have to share the microphone.
Very COVID friendly, I see.
How y'all doing? My name is Jose Sayas. I'm a resident, etc., etc. You know what everybody always says. So first of all, thank you all very much for the grow your own comments. Wow, I mean, I think that goes a long way. I'm really glad to see that, we're all on the same page with that. That's beautiful. Specifically with what Miss Felix said, I mean, that's a huge thing in my home. I'm sure it's the same in hers. Hispanics don't come in one color. So it is nice to see that we're putting emphasis on not so much the color of Hispanics, but the culture of who we are as a people. And I think also, just to go along with that, ideas, the diversity of ideas is very important to me in our school district, probably more so than color or race or anything else. You might have 100 teachers in the same room. They might all have different colors. It's very strange that they are diverse in their ideas or morals or perspectives of the world. So it is nice that we're showing our students someone of the same color, but it's definitely not someone like them. So I think that diversity of ideas goes a very long way. And lastly, I'm a lover of numbers. Not as much as Lochner, but I'm a lover of numbers. So I would ask, what percentage, and I know Mrs. Green stressed qualified, and believe me, I want qualified teachers. What percentage of qualified minority teachers are applying, and what percentage of qualified minority teachers are making it through? That would be my biggest.
Thank you so much. I'm going to be honest with you. It's a low number. It's a low number. I had an interview today, and she made it to the next round. But it was a wonderful, I'm not going to tell you who it was for, yada, yada, yada. But our first candidate was a woman of color. She was young. And we were all impressed with her. All of us agreed that she needed to move forward. Okay? How many, because what I'm hearing is that in the next report, and please correct me if I'm right or wrong, we had 50 interviewees. We had 20 males. We had, of those 20 males, this would be a lot. 3 were African American, 3 were Caucasian, 3 were Hispanic. All right, somebody who counts. Make sure I get my numbers right. Okay, and 3 were Middle Eastern. Okay, is that the information you want?
We do want that.
Well, that was 6%.
Okay, that's right. You were head of the math department. Sorry about that.
Can I
So that is the information that you want.
We do want to know that. And I think even beyond the number is knowing what the qualifications were and maybe what was missing if a candidate did not move forward. Because I think that's very important to know. And if we don't have a way of rectifying that, we can communicate that to the colleges, to the hiring process. We can maybe try and have some impact with OLAS. I think that's where we need to, put our emphasis in terms of change. Because we cannot hire whoever is not available. So we're working from a very minute pool. So I think any efforts that we can make towards increasing the availability of minorities, people of color, men of color, we should definitely concentrate on that. And
So let me, go ahead.
I just want to say one, I don't want to forget, I keep forgetting. I do think that we need to give Ms. Green access to the information she needs so that she can compile that information. Like you said several times, I don't know if I can do that. Can we agree that, she can have access to numbers so that you can provide us with some statistical information? Is that okay, Mr. Lochner?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
I just don't want you to feel like you don't have access, Ms. Green.
Okay, like I said, this is a new position.
Okay.
I didn't want to come in like gangbusters, because I could have done that too. I wanted to respect
No, that's fine.
the process. So now that we are learning together, I will call HR tomorrow, and this is what I need from them. Okay, how many people were hired last year? How many people of color were hired? How many females? How many males? Young? I mean, we can really break it down. Age, etc. So at least we can get an idea of what we have and what we possibly may need.
Yes.
So we're agreeing upon that.
Yes, I am agreeing on that, but I also want anecdotal information from you based on the interviews that you sit in.
All right, so today, I interviewed on Tuesday, I'm not going to tell you the department, but on Tuesday, I interviewed, along with community member and the department head, 8 candidates. So from those 8 candidates, you want to know their gender, their color, their race. Yes or no?
What I want to know is, for those that did not move forward, what were some of the reasons? What were they lacking? How can we maybe improve our outreach, to find people that have those qualifications, or maybe influence, colleges or entities that help.
I think it would be
Teachers.
easier if we just voted, decided as a board what the criteria is, send it over to
Agreeing
Betty
to
so
that.
she has something that she can look at
We can do
and
that.
measure it that way.
We can definitely do that. Mr. Moss? Is that okay?
I do have one suggestion that has been a noticing from the community for decades, and that is that the advertising of jobs does not go directly to the residents. We advertise for custodians, we advertise for TAs and monitors, we advertise for the professional positions that are lower paying in this district. But what we don't advertise is for the teachers directly, like in the bulletin, going to every house, for the administrative positions. The 5 and 6 figure, the high 5 and 6 figure salaries don't seem to get advertised directly to the community. This has been a critique. This has been a critique, not just me saying it at the microphone. I'm sure some of you have seen it on social media, people taking pictures of the advertisement and saying, why not teachers, why not administrators? So I would say that's a big deal.
Mr. Moss, if I can just jump in. So one of the things that we did do is that we've put all of our postings for all teaching positions on our Facebook page. And I don't know how many, are actually followers within the community, but that is certainly a huge step forward in terms of making sure that that is advertised within the community. So I would encourage anyone who's looking for a teaching position to, first, of course, make sure that they're registering with OLAS, because those notifications can be automatic for certain school districts. And then, have that, constant, vigilance with people within the district or within the community, because we are posting those teaching jobs on our Facebook page. Ms. Green, I wanted just to piggyback on what Ms. Burgos was saying, and that is, aside from those numbers, why not do your own small experiment in terms of what kind of applicants and applications you get by testing the OLA system in a way that you have described? You don't have to give us the detail. Please don't, as a matter of fact, right?
I don't know how to use OLAS. I didn't, I'm just saying you need to change the algorithm.
No, but what I'm saying is that why not have that be one of those things, those roads that you travel down in terms of, seeing what the outcome is, based on what you've learned through your own research. So do you understand what I'm saying? So.
I'm not sure.
So what Ms. Green was saying is that look, there are parameters set in OLAS in terms of, narrowing down certain candidates, test the system to see if it's real. We don't know. This is just a theory. So,
No, you can't do fake applicants.
you can't do fake applicants. That doesn't work.
What I'd also like to do is sit with Mrs. Lyons, because she pulls the
There you go.
OLAS. If I could sit with her to see how it's done, and perhaps to change, like I said, everything is the
What about
algorithm.
that? Just sitting with Diane
Just sitting with
Lyons, who
Mrs.
does that, right?
Lyons to see how she does it, how she gets what is the information that she's given so that these numbers or these people come out. And to Ms. Gonzalez Prescott, we're Facebook friends, she has been advertising the applications. All right, so thank you, because you've been putting it out there.
I put it out there for our community to see it. I also put it out in teachers groups that are out there. And I guess I started the conversation in regards to grow your own, and I guess they said there's a teacher shortage. But the feedback I get is there's no teacher shortage. No one hires us within, we have to go all the way to New York City to go and find a job. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a position available. And sometimes I get messages. They're like, okay, well, is that position available for people that are internal? I'm like, I don't know, just apply on OLAS, and you get a fair chance,
Well, that
or
goes-
we hope that they do.
Yeah, you see, that goes to the point that I was saying, in terms of diversity needs to be intentional. So, to the point that we were talking about a little earlier, so we may have, qualified candidates, but sometimes there's a reluctance to hire that teacher from the city because it's an unknown versus somebody that we may know through somebody that we may know through a relationship within the building, within the district. You see what I'm saying? So that is where.
That's one of the issues that you deal with. if
Yeah,
truth be told.
that's where that favoritism still
Right, you
may.
have your favoritism, and I am of the mindset, again, the most qualified. So if the most qualified comes from the New York City Department of Education, even though it's your friend or your girl or your boy, give that person a chance. Let's see them get to the next level. They may interview horribly, or there may be something about them that doesn't
Yeah.
fit with this district, but at least give them a chance to try.
Yeah, I just want to just correct a misconception. We actually do hire quite a few people from the New York City. And one of the reasons being is they actually are outstanding at their professional development. When you speak to a New York City teacher, they have a lot more, they have a great deal more opportunities in professional development, and we are incredibly impressed. I mean, the cabinet and I, when we speak to a New York City teacher, I wish that we had the time and the resources, but they really do have their act together in terms of professional development, and you really kind of get blown away when you talk to some of these teachers as to their knowledge.
you know what,
So
Dominic,
we
that
actually do hire, you know, a fair amount.
That might be a statistic that you could track also, like in terms of where this teacher came from, you know.
Well, on our rubric, we included, if they were from New York City,
Yeah, that's one of
we
them.
gave them a point.
That's one of the
Because the
points.
New York City teachers are different when you look at their qualifications. A lot of them have, as Mr. Lotion has said, has gone through teacher training, et cetera, et cetera. I give you credit for trying to change the system, all right? Because the system has been in place for a long time. And there are things about systems that you don't see, that there's a resistance to changing. So I give the Brentwood Board of Education credit for at least attempting to change the system that has been in place for a while, to give everybody equal access. It's not going to be easy, but at least you're trying. There's school districts on Long Island who are not going to do it. Let's be honest. They're not going to do it. They're going to continue to hire people who look like them, and then they're going to lie about why they hired them. That's truth also. So give yourself credit for attempting to change the system that has been in place for a long time. Are there any other questions for me?
Could I just add that part of this legislation, when every school district is supposed to have a DEI person, that report that you give, that they give, will have to go to Albany. So it's not just going to be something that you report to the Board of Education. They will all have to
That's a good point.
They're
report.
going to start tracking it.
Yes.
I think we had one more question from the audience.
Same thing. All right. So just a question for Mr. Lochner. You had mentioned that the applicants that were coming from the city were very well prepared. They had a lot of professional development. Could you just explain what professional development means for us who don't know what that means?
Sure. I'm sorry, but you didn't state your name. Could you please state your name again?
My name is Jose Say. Oh,
I'm only kidding. No, it's yeah, that's actually a great question. They have, and right now, you know, I'll take help. Maybe Mr. Moss can help me, but they have so many different programs for their teachers. So let's take, for example, on the elementary level. You know, when you speak to an elementary teacher from the city, that they have gone through various trainings in terms of pedagogy, you know, in terms of the actual teaching, but then they also have programs for literacy, writing, reading, math, and you speak to them, and you're like, well, you know, it's really quite impressive. And they're mandated, you know, they have kind of a different set of rules than, you know, we have out on the island. They're mandated to attend quite a few of these professional developments during their career. So professional development is where a teacher goes, could be one-on-one, could be in a large, you know, auditorium, and they're getting training by trainers. They're getting trained by trainers professionally. And it could be over the course of a week, it could be over the course of once a month for the entire year. But at the conclusion, they've actually sat through, you know, they sat through professional development. It actually doesn't end there, too. I should tell you that they also have teacher trainers. So, you know, we've actually hired quite a few teachers who were teacher trainers. So in other words, there are positions in New York City where now you take teachers, they're not administrators, they're teachers that are pushing into teachers' classes to help them become better educators. So they're teacher leaders, teacher trainers, they have different names. And it's really quite impressive. And also the charter schools in New York City, okay, some of them also have mandates. So their teachers actually may work from 7 o'clock in the morning to 5 o'clock in the afternoon. And part of their contract, because they're contracted, they don't, and it's a year-to-year contract. And part of that contract is they have to go to certain professional development. Now, we also, I'm very happy with Brentwood. I mean, we could always do better. But we also have professional development here. We have lots of courses for the teachers, and that they really do avail themselves of it. But the New York City, I will say, and I don't think anybody would disagree with me, they have a lot more opportunities for teachers to grow and learn. And the same with administrators. We've actually hired quite a few administrators, too, from the city. And they're also impressive. They've also gone through a lot of training, more than, sometimes that we have out here.
So, these programs, they're provided by the city, yeah? Right?
Yes.
Okay. So you mentioned that we had a few for ourselves in this district?
Well, not just a few. We actually have, a lot. I mean, we do have training for teachers that is ongoing, so believe me, I'm not
No,
putting
that's
down
not
our
what
teachers. I'm just saying, I think that they have more. We
Yeah.
have a significant amount here, but they have a lot, and they have whole departments who are focused on it. If you go into Brooklyn, they have an incredible, operation down there. I'm sure you guys have all been down there. It's really, that's where the DOE is headquartered. And they have administrators and teachers on special assignment there that really their sole purpose is to train teachers
Right.
and train administrators.
Right.
So they, in individual districts like ours really don't have the capacity to do that.
Yeah.
So, they throw a lot of resources
Yeah.
to that.
Yeah, and I think it's resources, obviously, that they have that we might not.
Right.
What I would like to know, if anyone does know, what percentage of their resources, what percentage of their,
The budget
Thank you.
goes towards that?
yes, and in relation to ours, that's what I would want to know.
It probably eclipses ours. It's probably pretty substantial.
Yeah, I would be very curious, because obviously, we're not going to go dollar for dollar with the city.
Right.
But I would like to know what the percentage is and why ours is
Right.
different.
Well, we do now, and thankfully, we're in a better position. We do hire, we are bringing in TOSAs, we're bringing in RTI specialists that we're hiring 4 more for the middle schools. That will give us 8 RTI. And those are actually specialists who help students, and they also help teachers, okay? They push into classrooms.
Yeah.
We also are hiring more teacher trainers next year. We have a couple in the district. We're actually going to be adding to that. So I shouldn't, downplay Brentwood. We are now given the opportunity,
Yeah.
focusing on, even more instruction.
Yeah, as a resident, I greatly appreciate it, because obviously, we don't know. But so that's first. And second, obviously, we're talking about grow your own. This is what we would need to invest in, the building up of our own.
Right.
So, sorry.
Piggyback on the PD, and then I have another question about residency. So we're at a diversity, equity, and inclusion workshop. My question is, what kind of diversity, equity, and inclusion training is actually happening for the teachers in Brentwood? What's happened this past year, and what's going to happen in the future? And then my other question is about residency. What role does residency really play in the hiring process? It was described tonight, and the hiring process was described tonight, and I really didn't hear how residency itself, how someone's living in the community, when does that really play a role in the hiring process, and how does it advantage the individual?
I can answer that question. Again, I'm not going to tell you what department it was, but nobody has ever said Betty Green said anything. But being a resident, being a community member, also gave you an extra point when it came to, let me say this right. We saw the resume, we went through it to make sure you had the qualifications. If you were a Brentwood resident or community member, we gave you an extra point, which put you ahead of maybe somebody else. And that's all I'm going to say about it, but it does count.
Mr. On the rubric. Mr. Rocha, could you try to tackle the other
It
question?
does count.
Yeah, actually,
Or
that's,
actually, I mean, if you want to expand on both of them, that's.
no, actually, Ms. Green's correct. I think they get a point for being a Brentwood resident, they get a point for being a Brentwood graduate as well. Those are two separate points, though.
Yeah,
Correct,
they're two
Ms. Green?
separate points.
So
If you
Brentwood
are
resident.
a community, listen, okay. If you are, that's all right, I'm good.
You sure?
I'm positive. I can speak. If you are a Brentwood community, if you're a Brentwood High School resident, that's one thing. If you're a Brentwood community resident, you get a check,
Right.
okay?
So do you
Because-
get, I'm sorry, do you get 2 points?
2.
If you're a graduate and a
No,
resident?
that wouldn't be fair.
No, I'm asking, that's what
Yeah,
it
I'm
sounds like.
sorry.
so- Right? It's
I don't
on
have
the-
the
The
rubric in
answer
front of
is
me.
yes. So one for resident, one for graduate.
But she said
It's
no.
one.
No, Ms.
Oh,
Rocha.
okay. No, Ms. Green is straightening us out. She actually knows far better
It's
than.
1 point, and I don't have the rubric in front of me
Right.
to remember all. I know it's 1 point for Brentwood.
Resident.
It was graduate and community member, because you could be a community member but not a graduate of Brentwood High School. So we gave you a point for that, or you could be a graduate of Brentwood High School. It's Brentwood High School graduate / community, so it's only 1 point.
You get one.
If you're either or.
If
Right.
you're either or
Either
both,
or.
it sounds like, if you're either or and both, you're still only gonna get one.
Right,
Right, okay.
right.
Ms. Green, you had said that the rubric is used with Ms. Palmer. Now, is it used for all applicants or just,
We're getting there. Again, that's a wonderful question, and when I see her tomorrow morning, I will give her the information that perhaps we need to do a rubric for all of the candidates.
I
because
thought that was the case.
I'm
I
sorry.
thought we
she
had a
has
rubric for the
specified Ms.
district.
Palmer, she uses it with Ms. Palmer.
Right.
Ms. Palmer did the rubric.
I thought you did the rubric for the
Every
district for
department
every
does it. We're learning, we're growing.
Right, it's
This will be my
just been
suggestion.
developed. That part has just been developed.
Right, we just developed this 2 weeks ago.
Oh.
2 weeks ago.
The numeric
We were
component.
looking at 168, 170 resumes. So we had to find the best,
Yeah, absolutely.
quickest way,
Right.
the most honest way to get this done. So we whittled them down. My suggestion would be that all departments
Right.
use a
Absolutely.
rubric. That would make to me, that would make the process a bit more fair.
Yes.
Okay, and then we came up with, once we reviewed the rubric, I think the highest, well, one person got a 0, but the highest, sorry, that's all I'm gonna say.
Ms. Green, you're not telling though. You're not telling the department, the
I'm not gonna
name,
tell
give
you
us
if you want
initials.
to hear anything else. One person.
Give us initials, you know.
One person got a 0, and we said, no, they didn't come from Brentwood.
That's very
No, they didn't come
You're right.
from, no, they didn't come from Brentwood. But, we're learning, we're growing, we're perfecting,
Okay.
okay? Remember, this is the first time this has been done. Okay? Like I said, we're ahead of a whole lot of other districts who
Right.
have not done it. All right? And we're trying to be as fair as possible to everyone, but we know what we're looking for also. For the psychological health, go girl, of our students.
Now, if I
was
can,
very excited about this rubric. I thought it was already in place for all.
the
of
rubric is in place on the elementary, but, we formalized it. But the columns that Ms. Green's referring to really have been in place since Ms. Green has come on as a consultant. But we just streamlined it to make it a numerical value.
Can we make
We were
that
looking,
model to
yeah, oh no, we are.
follow the-
No, that's the intention. But we have been, doing the things that, we have been describing in terms of looking at certain qualifications. But now if I could answer the DEI, because that's actually, we had a presentation not too long ago by Dr. Leone. We're actually one of the only districts, or one of the first districts, I should say, that actually have a DEI committee. And we began that work this year, actually, we began the exploratory part of it last year. But this year, we have a DEI committee. And the committee is made up of students, which is fantastic. We actually meet right here about once a month. We have students involved. We have teachers involved. We have administrators involved. And we have community members. Okay? And we also have CBOs, our community-based organization, involved. It's a wonderful organization, and it is diversity, equity, and inclusion. And what we have done this year is, with this committee, is we've brought in speakers from Eastern Suffolk BOCES, as well as other organizations. We've brought in DEI consultants where they meet with this committee, and we're putting together, and we're going to have a presentation not too long to the future. We put together our goals, because you don't want to just jump into this thing without discussing the goals. And what we've done, I'm very proud of the work that Dr. Leone and everybody on the committee, I'm also on the committee, what we've done is we've had these just fantastic discussions, and the kids have been involved. Like I said, they've been wonderful, addition, and we bounce ideas off, and we're creating goals as well as procedures. And the goal is for next year is now we roll that out to the community, okay, and the staff members. And to your question that you asked, that will actually be presented to our staff members next year as well as the community. And I have to say that, there are other organizations that have now this DEI and, committees that are forming. We're about, like I said, we're a little bit ahead of most other school districts. And the work that we're doing, I think, is terrific. And I think that when the community sees the goals of this DEI committee, as we roll that out next year, I think you'll be very impressed. And I just want to thank, we have lots of parents that are on it. They've been terrific. We have the teachers and, a cross-section of teachers and administrators. It's really been wonderful. And like I said, we have speakers in that have been really, spot on in terms of their education of us. And I'm really happy about that.
Mr. Lochner, if I could just take a moment to just expand, so on that note of training, I would want to know what training is the district providing to combat those issues on one of Ms. Green's slides that refer to the implicit bias. So sometimes we don't, people aren't aware that, what they are doing or the attitude or maybe their train of thought is a bias. The idea that, you don't understand the dialect might be slightly different. But then there's a preconceived bias against that dialect, be it what it may.
Sure.
So are we taking a proactive approach, and what is in place for that kind of training so that we are aware of that?
Right. Well, I just discussed the committee, just so that the district level committee, so I could explain that. I think it has been explained to the community, but I'm explaining it here now. But we've also had speakers in to the administrators. We've actually had, and where this implicit biases have been, spoken about, discussions have been made. It's also been brought to faculty meetings as well, where it's been presented to the faculty. So there has been ongoing training about these issues. My point is that those trainings have taken place, and now we're going to go a step further with this district level DEI committee and a rollout of our goals next year. So no, there has been professional development. Again, Jose, that's part of some of the training that we've brought in DEI consultants. They have met with various organizations within the district. But, and it's obviously, as Ms. Green has mentioned many times, it's really at its infancy. And we're continuing, to move in that direction and have even greater, impact next year.
Mr. Moss.
My concern is that this will be a formal engagement in terms of professional development, that teachers
will be trained, that they will be signing off on what they have done either online, which is the common thing now that people are taking
Right.
rules, or that they are signing off on a signing sheet for professional development that they do during the day in person.
Right.
Because
Yeah, we do have the Rice, Rice, oh my God, Miss Palmer only
You need
says
Miss
it.
Palmer.
Miss Palmer says it, 400 times a day, and now I can't remember what Rice stands for. But some of the modules are exactly what you're speaking about, Mr. Moss, that there are diversity, equity, and inclusion modules that we brought this in last year, and teachers are signing off when they go through the modules. So that has been part of our training as well. And thank you for reminding me. It is an online.
Right.
We have just so many different things, but the Rice, I wish I could
Mr.
remember.
Lochner, is that a requirement, though, or is it?
It is a requirement.
For that particular module?
Yeah, that they do the
Yeah.
module. If you remember this board, we had quite a bit of
No, I
discussion
know.
last year. I think we had to table it before we actually got
Yes.
some clarity. It's a professional development that we brought in, and it's, all of the teachers have to go through it. It's actually been outstanding in terms of helping focus our faculty meetings. So each one of the buildings are dedicating, once a month, they dedicate a faculty meeting to one of these modules. Now, we're all doing it slightly different. Some are led, some are, smaller groups where they go in and they take the module, and some are individual. So, but I tell you what, it's actually, I can't wait to see at the end, it's actually a 2-year process, what the faculty says about it.
Any other questions? We've got a newcomer. You've got to come up, you've got to state your name. Nobody knows who you are, Brandon. All right, just enough.
I'm trying not to say anything, but I feel like I should mention it as someone with experience in it. So it's
Come up and speak to the microphone.
okay.
All of Brentwood wants to know who you are. Who's the guy in the back shouting?
The Dunder Mifflin.
Dunder Mifflin, exactly.
Yeah, sorry, I'm
favorite
going to the
company.
gym after. I'm underdressed. I apologize. So I'm here to request and suggest. All right. So the first thing, as a veteran myself, can that be part of the diversity statistics of like our hiring rate for our veterans? If the board's okay with it.
That's a great idea. Perfect, yep.
Because I'd be curious to know,
Sure.
and then my suggestion for hiring and things like that, there is a program, it's called Triple T. That's the acronym, it's Troops to Teacher. So basically it's a program that the government funds, they just reestablished it for fiscal year '22. So it was voted in, it's taking a little bit to get back running. It was reauthorized though, so troops are transitioning back to civilian life with the necessary certifications and education to become an educator. So that's a potential program to reach with the state office to offer employment so that they have job placement at the end of their program. They have a window of opportunity here in the district. So that's my 2 cents.
There's, wonderful, and I just have a question.
Troops,
Right,
troops to
right.
teacher.
Troops to teachers,
Yeah,
Triple T.
Triple T.
So I've got a question for you.
Okay.
And I'm assuming your last name is?
It's Garcia. yeah.
Garcia, right?
Yeah.
First name is Brandon?
First name Brandon.
Okay, just wanted to.
Common spelling.
So, listen, so my question is,
Brentwood graduate.
are you enrolled in the Triple T program, Troops to Teachers?
I am not.
Okay.
I am not.
As a former, right?
Right.
Brentwood student, leader, right?
Right.
I think you'd be a great role model.
Veteran.
I'm more than happy to talk to students. I have no type of memory retention, so I don't know if I would be great at educating from the book. I'm great with educating on life. I can maybe tell you a couple quote-unquote war stories, just tell you some basic leadership things maybe, but other than that, I don't think it's my forte.
Thank you very much.
Right. I'll leave it to the professionals.
Any other questions, comments, concerns? So the one thing that I just want to end this with is that about, I don't know, Ms. Moore, 7 years ago maybe, we were talking about huge transition period in the Brentwood School District. And at the time, I don't even know how many years ago it was, but at the time, there was an estimate that Brentwood was going to transition and that there was going to be a huge number of teachers that were going to retire. I think the number was at some point 700 or 800 teachers who were going to become of age to retire, and they were expecting, the district was expecting, that this was going to happen over a, few years. I think that we may be in year, 4 of that. So basically the point that I'm trying to make is that we are in transition right now. We have huge blocks of teachers that are retiring or who will be retiring soon. I don't know what number year we are in terms of that 700 or 800 teacher transition estimate that we have. But and we should also add to that the fact that we've expanded our day programs to include 9-period days, so we're going to be hiring additional teachers for those programs. And I guess the point that I'm trying to make is that, if we are serious about diversifying, now is the time to do it. We are, this is, I think, a priority. I think that it's going to be wonderful for our community. And having that pool of jobs available, may not happen because for another number of decades, because it's an odd, factor, an odd idea that we have so many retirees within a limited number of years. So the point is, let's make sure that we maintain this as a priority. Let's make sure that we give this the emphasis that it deserves. And I'm excited to see what the future holds for Brentwood. To each and every board member, I thank you for all of your efforts. To Mr. Lochner, again, to you and your cabinet on behalf of the entire Board of Education. We appreciate everything that you are all doing.
No, thank you.
And we should be proud of where we are, because this is absolutely, to Ms. Green's point, this is pretty unusual for a district in Suffolk County to be doing at such a aggressive rate. So thank you to all the community members who were here, because although you were a few, you had some really spot-on questions, and I think that you represented the community very, very well. So with that being said, I would like to request a motion to adjourn. Motion by Trustee Burgos. Could I have a second?
Second.
Second by Trustee Felix. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? So moved. Have a wonderful night, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Yeah.
So, I hit you on